Hey, it's Monday night in East Lansing. Jim Comparoni, publisher, SpartanMag.com. Come on in, grab a beverage, grab a warm beverage if you're in the Midwest, if you're in the state of Michigan. Warm up a little bit. It is still football season. It's basketball season. It's a great time to check out Michigan State sports at SpartanMag.com. Again, my name is Jim Comparoni, publisher, SpartanMag.com. SpartanMag.com is the website. At Rivals.com, we've been covering Michigan State basically since online since the beginning of the internet. Prior to that, with an old print publication called SpartanMag.com. We used to have a lot of fun with that. Let me adjust a couple things here real quick. Hopefully everything doesn't come tumbling down. We are pretty casual, pretty primitive, but we are serious about our Michigan State talk, our Michigan State discussions, and that's what we do here at Spartan Mag Live every week. And I've got to get things situated right here with some of my tweets and everything. And those of you that have been here before, you know the drill. Go ahead and post in the chat section, and we will get to your questions. Also, previously, earlier today, over at SpartanMag.com, I asked Michigan State fans, subscribers at SpartanMag.com, to go ahead and post some questions on the Underground Bunker message board and the Final Forum basketball message board. Any questions that you have, we will try to tackle them in mailbag fashion. And we always have a lot of fun with that. We'll talk a little bit football recruiting tonight. If you haven't already, check out the SpartanMag.com Recruiting Wrap podcast from last Friday with myself and Corey Robinson. Corey did a great job, always does a great job, has his ear to the ground on Michigan State football recruiting. And that podcast went about 70 minutes, and we touched on a lot of things with Michigan State recruiting as Michigan State recruiting comes down the stretch with signing day taking place this week. And, well, I'll get right into it right now in terms of how much we expect, how much movement we expect from Michigan State between now and Sunday. I was talking to Corey about this, and we're not expecting a lot. Michigan State with a big commitment from Aaron Lockett on Sunday. That was a big one for Michigan State. They need help at the wide receiver position. We expect Corey Robinson will probably, if he gets a chance, will come in today and answer some questions also. But Corey, I follow his lead on this. He knows a lot about these things. He's thinking that maybe Michigan State might stand pat with Aaron Lockett and might be done for the early signing period. And by my count, I think Michigan State will still have 2 or 3 scholarships left. They can maybe sign some more in February or look into the transfer portal, which I expect them to do. Primarily, I would expect at the tight end position. And Wednesday, Mark D'Antonio will be having his signing day press conference, of course, and I would expect him to field some questions in that regard. And I'm kind of anticipating that he would say that they'll look in the transfer portal a few positions, offensive line, tight end being a couple of them. They could have gone out and gotten Levi Gazarick, the tight end from, I think it's North Baltimore, Ohio, committed to Bowling Green. Michigan State offered him, but then backed off. Now there's indications he's going to go ahead and sign with Bowling Green. But I think with Lockett, they might be done. They were still looking at Yassine, the wide receiver from Walled Lake, who's committed to Northwestern. Hot last week. I'm thinking that now that Michigan State has Lockett, I'm thinking they might be done at wide receiver. They've had a good wide receiver class, very good wide receiver class with the addition of Lockett. If you're not familiar with Lockett, Aaron Lockett, 4-star wide receiver from Minneapolis, highly ranked guy, had a quiet type of recruitment. There was obvious interest in Michigan State last summer. He was serious about basketball, still is to an extent, and his recruitment was very quiet. Did not do many interviews, and it was hard to gauge where he stood and where other programs stood. Took an unofficial visit to Ohio State, took a couple to Minnesota, and then Corey Robinson was among those who broke the story that Michigan State was going to get an official visit from him this past weekend. That news broke last week. In the podcast on Friday, we said that Michigan State was likely the favorite. Michigan State looked like they had a good chance to get him. And in fact, on Sunday, Michigan State got a commitment from him. Good job by Brad Salem leading the recruitment there on that side of Lake Michigan, on that side of Lake Superior. He handles recruiting in Wisconsin and Minnesota over the years. That was a big one for Michigan State. Michigan State's recruiting class, for what it's worth, was ranked number 39 in the country prior to that commitment. Michigan State adds a 4-star commitment recruit, and they bump up from 39 to number 30. That's what one 4-star recruit can do to a class that's ranked between 26 and 46. One 4-star. And there's not a lot of 4-stars in the Rivals.com rankings. There is 4-star inflation at other sites, but Rivals.com only usually gives out, I don't know, maybe 300 4-stars per year. You get one, it'll move you up because those teams that are ranked between 25 and 45, they don't have a lot of 4-star recruits. There's not a lot of 4-star recruits out there. Then you look at Alabama's class, and they'll have 20 of them. And you wonder why some schools dominate on the top end so much. Well, they're getting the first 20 picks at recess, So Michigan State, Snow was a 4-star for a while. Still is in some regards. I don't expect him to get a 4th star with Rivals. He was before, but he's a 3-star now. But Michigan State with a 4-star there bumps them up to 39 to 30. If Michigan State doesn't sign any more players, it's going to be hard to stay at 30, of course. Now, Justin Stevens, the offensive lineman from Canada, I'm expecting him to be a 2-star recruit maybe even a 3-star recruit when that gets finished here in the next 24 hours. So right now he stands as a 0-star recruit, which hurts Michigan State's computer rankings. When he gets rated, he'll be a 2 or a 3. That'll help Michigan State a little bit. But mainly, I'm not expecting many commitments from Michigan State from this point forward, at least between now and Wednesday. Other schools will be adding recruits, so there's going to be a chance that other schools will leapfrog Michigan State. But I don't anticipate Michigan State finishing outside of the top 40. At this time last week, there's a chance of that. But that 4-star recruit helps. Michigan State needed help in the skill positions on offense this year. No question about that. Aaron Lockett gives them some talent there. Ricky White, the 3-star from Georgia, played really well in the Georgia State Championship game on Saturday night. Michigan State did a really good job getting in on him early, getting him to campus. Early official visit, I think, last summer. Got the foot in the door early. Then he went, and he was like a good junior recruit, but not gangbusters. Chad Simmons from Rivals.com posted on our board earlier today saying that, Georgia State was kind of hoping to keep him a secret and keep other out-of-state recruiters away from him. Michigan State got him to campus. He liked Michigan State. Then he went out and had a great senior year. I mean, a great senior year. He's quick, he's shifty, he's explosive. Type of talent they need in this offense. Whether or not he can be an immediate impact guy, I'm not sure. Possibly. I'm sure he's planning to do that. I'm sure Michigan State's expecting him to compete in that regard. But he went out and had a great senior year. Other schools came after him, including Tennessee. But Michigan State looks like they've fended everyone off. He's going to stick with that commitment, it looks like, and become a Spartan. You never know till signing day. But if they get Ricky, did I say Ricky Williams? I mean Ricky White. Ricky White. They get Ricky White. That is a deal where you make an early evaluation, you get in early, and then he blows up as a senior and you hold on to him. That is the type of recruiting Michigan State needs to do, especially in a state like Georgia, talent-rich state like Georgia. Early evaluation, early decisiveness in terms of going after him full blast, offering him a scholarship. Then he blows up. Now Michigan State in the catbird seat. Good chance. They've got him. Looks like he's going to sign on Wednesday. So you have Lockett and Ricky White. Ian Stewart, one of the better skill position players in the state of Michigan. Big, 6'2.5", 6'3". Played quarterback a lot this year at Gibraltar. Carlson, big guy, running ability, running after contact as a wide receiver. Now remember, Benny Fowler played a lot of single wing quarterback at Detroit Country Day. And it took him a while to develop as a receiver, to catch outside the framework of his body, things like that, and became an NFL player. You know the story on Benny Fowler. But Ian Stewart and Benny Fowler, similar in some ways. Stewart looked good at the camps, but Benny Fowler came to Michigan State's camp as an unknown and did what you would expect a future NFL player to do. So I don't want to compare him to Benny Fowler in all regards, but he is like Benny Fowler in that he played like a single wing quarterback as a senior in high school. But you got Stewart, and then you have, Stewart's a guy that can play some defense too, so he gives you some flexibility, some versatility. And, you throw in Montori Foster from Lakewood St. Ed's at 6'2", stock on the rise, wide receiver. You know the story on him. We've been talking about him for a couple weeks. My point is that entire wide receiver class, Michigan State needed an influx of some juice in that pool of talent. I think they did a really good job with Ricky White, Aaron Lockett, Montori Foster, who's kind of a sleeper, might have as high a ceiling as any of them, and then Ian Stewart with some versatility. So, that's where Michigan State stands right now going into signing day. And I think we'll talk a little bit more about that. Maybe we'll try to have another one before tomorrow, another one of these before tomorrow. Maybe we'll get with Corey and do a podcast. Wednesday is the press conference. Might want to iron things out one last time on signing day eve. Now, let's go to the mailbag. This question was posted. These questions were posted earlier today. Sherlock from Sterling Heights, Michigan. And he says that a guy on our message board named Strategic 100, our message board being the Underground Bunker message board at SpartanMag.com. It is the church of what's happening now in Michigan State sports and has been for a long time. Strategic 100 apparently posted. He was talking about the Gus Malzahn offense, and Sherlock is asking me, what do I know about it, and do you think we should try it? And he says, love these Spartan Mag live podcasts, and will there be one next week? Let's see, what is next week? Next week, let's see, what day does Christmas fall on? Christmas is on the 24th. 23rd. I think there's a good chance next Monday, the 23rd, we will have one. So pencil that one in, Sherlock. I know you're out there doing a lot of research, and we appreciate Sherlock. In the meantime, yes, next week holidays kick in big. I want to wish everybody a great holiday season. Get with your family. It's a good time to be with your family. Get with your Spartan family. Get with your real family. Well, we are your real family too. Anyway, hope everybody has a great holiday season next week, and I hope you're in the midst of a great holiday season going all the way back to Thanksgiving. I had a great Thanksgiving, and hope to follow it up next week with a great Christmas if I get a train in that slot car set like I asked for. I'm joking. I didn't ask for that. Anyway, Malzahn, the Malzahn offense. That's interesting that Strategic would ask about that. Strategic is a guy that knows a lot about football. He's one of our more astute observers. I think he's got a coaching background. Malzahn, he was, Gus Malzahn was it in terms of offense 5, 6, 7 years ago. He helped Auburn win a national title when Gene Chizik was there. Then Malzahn went to Arkansas State or something. Then Gene Chizik fell on hard times at Auburn, got fired. They brought Malzahn back, had him in the national title game. He was still the guy, but then the success went down a little bit. You know how people are in Auburn. I mean, they lost a couple of games. They're ready to fire him. Last year, the offense went stagnant, and Auburn fans thought that Auburn's offense was too predictable. Same plays every time. Where have you heard that before? Part of it was Auburn's offensive line had a ton of injuries last year. Where have you heard that before? And Stidham was the quarterback, and all of a sudden he didn't have a very good senior season. Where have you heard that before? So this year, offensive line was better. Offense was better at Auburn. And now, they beat Alabama, and some people like their offense again. Now they had a true freshman quarterback, and he did some good things, helped them come back against Oregon, a game that had playoff implications for later in the year. And then he struggled. I think it was the Florida game. He made some freshman mistakes. But overall, Auburn this year jumps up to number 53 in the nation in total offense. I was going through total offense. A lot of people like to cite total offense rankings at the Underground Bunker when talking about Michigan State's offense and how bad they think it is and how bad it is. And certainly, statistically, it's been terrible in total offense. I think that yards per play is more important and points per possession is more important, but total offense is worth something. But it can be skewed because a lot of it is geared toward up-tempo teams. But now that everybody's up-tempo, and now, a lot of teams now have scaled back from super fast tempo. There's still some teams going super fast, but a lot of teams have scaled slower, like Oregon and Alabama have. Auburn will still go fast here and there. But Auburn's number 53 in total offense. I was looking at the rankings just to see where some teams fit now that the regular season is over, plus the championship games. Some notable teams in the rankings. Florida was 54. Georgia was 60 with all their talent. But Georgia plays slow a little bit, so that affects them in total offense. Florida State they hired Kendall Briles. He was supposed to save the world for them last year because he invented football. Florida State, 64 in the country total offense. 68 Michigan with the and they played good offense at the end of the year, the last month. They struggled to find a groove with Gaddis and the speed and space stuff, which eventually morphed into more of a power thing, power to the edge, power inside. They were varied with their blocking. They did a good job. End up 68 in the country. 75 in total offense was Syracuse. At this time last year, everybody thought Dino Babers was going to save the world in terms of offense, and they are super up-tempo. But this year, I'm not sure what happened with Syracuse, but they were a train wreck from the beginning. But they ended up beating Wake Forest at the end. At the end of the season with Newman, the quarterback at Wake Forest, was injured for that game. But the backup for Wake Forest put up good numbers. But anyway, other notables. Iowa. Would you trade seasons with Iowa right now? Would you trade futures with Iowa right now? If you're Michigan State, I think I would. Just because there's more unknowns with Michigan State. Even though Michigan State has been better than Iowa over the last 10 years, but not the last 2 years. Iowa just keep being Iowa. And, they were close. They played Penn State pretty close. They played Michigan pretty close. Where'd they go, 9-3? Beat Iowa State, beat Nebraska. Close to having a really good season, right? Well, Iowa was number 98 in the country in total offense. Iowa, number 98. And they've been running the same version of that. Similar versions of that same offense for years, even after O'Keefe was kind of moved on. I mean, it's Kirk Ferentz's offense. They went a little more shotgun this year, varied it a little bit more, but not much. There's still outside zone power between the tackles. And number 98 in the country in total offense, but they won some games. Almost had a huge season. But that's a team that plays slow tempo. They huddle. And that has an impact on total offense. I didn't look to see where Iowa ranked in terms of yards per play. That would be more interesting. Duke Blue Devils. Remember when Cutcliffe was the greatest coach in the history of mankind and he was going to save the world? And Peyton Manning, when he was trying to decide what he was going to do, he went down to Durham, North Carolina and worked out with Cutcliffe just to get back to basics. Mr. Miyagi style. Well, Cut's offense ranked number 114 in the country this year. So he must have, even though he's pushing late 60s, he must have forgot a lot about football. He's number 114 in total offense. Along with me, there was one other. I was going over the top 100 rankings in total offense this year, and there was one I wanted to mention, and that's Wake Forest, number 12 in the country in total offense. Number 12 in the country in total offense, 473 yards per game for Wake Forest. They go 8-4. I made this point before, and I'll make it again. A lot of observers that were hoping for the best possible bowl game for Michigan State in terms of an intriguing matchup. Yeah, we were hoping for Michigan State versus North Carolina. North Carolina is a named program. Michigan State versus Florida State. Florida State's a named program. Even Michigan State versus Pittsburgh or Boston College, both semi-named programs. Wake Forest, not a named program at all, obviously. Mentioned that last year. And I've been on radio shows, and people have asked me about, Wake Forest as if they're a mid-major or something. I'm like, those teams I just mentioned, North Carolina, Boston College, Florida State, Wake Forest beat all three of those teams. Tied for third best team in the ACC. Number 12 in the country in total offense, 8-4, real close to being 10-2. I'm not saying they're great, but with that offense, I mean, it's really hard for Michigan State to outscore air this year. I really thought Michigan State, with all the problems they had at the end of the year with the 4-game losing streak, I thought there was a chance they would come out and have like play like they did against Western Michigan and put up 40 and have a real nice game against Rutgers and Maryland. Didn't happen. Red zone offense was terrible down the stretch. So that was disconcerting. To me, that was probably more disconcerting than losing those 4 games. Now, it didn't help that you were blown out in the 4 games earlier. But Michigan State's offense is a problem, obviously. Can they outscore Wake Forest? Right now, I don't see any indications that would lead me to believe that Michigan State's got a good chance to outscore them. As far as what Wake Forest does on offense, there's one thing they do that's really unique, and you'll see it. When they run zone read, they hold the read, the mesh play. You know, a lot of teams do it fast to make a decision. They will hold that read and hold it and hold it and hold it a long time, longer than most. And when D'Antonio was talking about there's some newness in what they do, that's what he's talking about. I'm sure that's one of the things he's talking about. And maybe I'll get a chance to ask him about it tomorrow. There's going to be interviews tomorrow, but I'm not sure D'Antonio will talk. It might just be players. We just heard that a short while ago before we came on the air here. Now, so that's what I wanted to talk about with Wake Forest. All right, here we go. All right, Realtor Evan again from Bloomfield Village asks, do you see Michigan State snagging an 11th hour recruit or two from a MAC school like Michigan State did last year with Maverick Hansen? Any names or predictions? You know, I mentioned earlier that Levi Gazarek, the tight end from North Baltimore, Ohio, was a guy that Michigan State was looking at, offered, and then backed off. Like I said, I'm thinking that Michigan State will end up looking in the transfer portal for a tight end. I'm guessing that's what they'll tell us. I've heard that a little bit, some insider vibe on that, and Corey Robinson's heard that too, so I think that's going to be the case. Because they need help, like, immediately at tight end. Seibert did a really good job this year as a transfer that earned a scholarship from Buffalo. Everybody can see that. Michigan State can go to the portal, find who they think are the 5 best tight ends, and say, look, you can come in and be the next Matt Seibert. And be serious about it. Dotson's been okay. Every time you think Matt Dotson is on the verge of taking things to the next level, he ends up getting hurt or having a problem of some sort. He's got to have a big offseason for next year. But to put it all the eggs in that Matt Dotson basket, Michigan State's going to need better than that. They'll need more than that. As far as others, I think Michigan State was in position to get an 11th hour MAC flip from Latrell Fordham, the 6'4" wide receiver from Davison High School. He was instrumental in helping Davison win a state championship this year in the state of Michigan. He's committed to Ball State. Had a torn Achilles from Dotson. What did I say? I can't remember what I said about his injury, but thanks, Old Tuck. But Latrell Fordham, Michigan State was talking to him, met with him last week. Don Treadwell went to his school, met with him. They were keeping him warm for an 11th hour situation. But with Michigan State getting the commitment from Lockett, I think wide receiver is done. And I think flipping Yassine from Northwestern, I suspect that that's no longer on the table either. Now, we'll talk recruiting here in a minute. But first, let's shift gears to basketball. Michigan State, what are they, 8-3? They beat Oakland University last weekend at Little Caesars Arena. Did some things well, some things not so well. I thought it was interesting that Tom Izzo was really positive after that game. If Michigan State were 9-1 and rolling and things were going well and played like that, that would be a game in which Izzo would come to the podium after the game and really rip his team and keep him in the locker room and yell at him for 20 minutes before going to the press conference. But this team, they've come through a lot with injuries and other things, and right now Izzo's kind of protecting them. And they didn't play well against Oakland. 17 turnovers, and they shot, 20% from three-point range, 7 out of 33, 21%. Didn't play well, played pretty good on defense. But that Oakland team was probably the most ill-equipped Oakland team I've seen since this. I don't want to say since the series started, but every year Oakland seems like they've got a chance to really push Michigan State. Maybe not every year, but a lot of years. This Oakland team on offense really didn't have much firepower, and Michigan State won easily. But just fumbling with the transition game. Izzo sees progress in the transition game, certain elements. Rebounding, the outlet, the push. Thought they ran better because last week, I think against Rutgers in one of the other games, he didn't feel the wings were running well. I didn't feel Bingham was running well down the middle. He felt that they did that better. But then Winston didn't connect. There were 3 or 4 wild pitch turnovers in transition. That's not like Winston. That's what he does best. And 2 times it was Kyle Arns. He did it once with Kyle Arns against Rutgers. I can see if it's Bingham, a guy that's still new to this role, new to the playing group. I could see if it were, Kithier, a second-year player also that's still new to this role. And I could see if you're misfiring on them because you don't have that telepathy that you had, with Nick Ward last year. Izzo didn't like the last month of practice for obvious reasons, various reasons, getting the same pageness. So that's understandable. But for Winston to misfire with Kyle Arns 3 times, twice in that game and once last week, we talked to Kyle Arns after practice today about that, and Arns said, he says that's always going to be my fault because Winston is the man, and if it's a misfire, that's my fault. But that's Kyle Arns. He's a great team player. Everybody's protecting Cassius right now. But Cassius Winston making those passes, making those decisions, at some point that's going to tune in and become a strength for this team. But right now, it's not where it normally would be, again, for obvious reasons. And right now, Cassius Winston is shooting 33% from three-point range. He's a career 43% guy. What was he, 49% as a sophomore? Izzo said today he's not worried about that. Well, you don't want to put extra pressure on it. But Winston, bless his heart, is doing what he can. He was staying after practice today, shooting extra. And they practiced today around noon because school is out right now. They had final exams last week. They're able to do some 2-a-days. They did 2-a-days on Sunday. Today, taper back to 1, getting ready to play Northwestern on Wednesday. But Winston, there was a little more smiling today. We've seen that in practice the last week or so. It's never going to be 100% right ever again, obviously, for Cassius Winston. But if we're looking as to what impact it's had on the team already, it's had an impact for sure. What can they do from this point forward? They're going to do their best. Cassius is going to do his best. There's a great story in the Detroit Free Press by Sean Windsor, the fine columnist for the Detroit Free Press, Sunday, about Winston and more insight on everything that he's going through and Michigan State's going through. If you get a chance, go read that. Winston telling Sean Windsor that there have been many times when Cassius Winston cannot get to sleep. And he lays awake in bed, and next thing he knows, it's daylight. And not eating, not working out like he should. For the first time in his life, doesn't want to practice basketball or work on his own game. And that's one of Izzo's commandments during the course of the season. Give everything you can in the film room, practice, come in extra, get extra shots up. Well, today, Cassius Winston was putting extra shots up after practice. And practiced well today, and he did some good things. But like Izzo said in the press conference today, that Michigan State is in the process of kind of reinventing themselves. That's a term that Doug Wojcik gave to the team, or gave to Izzo back behind closed doors. Not to stress out too much. Yeah, preseason number 1, whatever. They've had injuries now. Rocket Watts is out. People aren't shooting well. They're having to reinvent what they're going to be. 17 turnovers in that game, 7 out of 33 from three-point range. Izzo saw 33 three-pointers after the game, and he didn't like that figure. But I tell you what, like he said, the way Oakland played Michigan State's going to, you have to shoot three-pointers because they're trying to take away Winston with not one defender, not two, but 6 eyes. The Tom Izzo 6 eyes, 3 defenders. Anytime he tries to drive, there were 3 guys. I don't know if I've ever seen that extravagant of a defense on one player with the ball. There were times when Michigan State was like in a 1-2-2, maybe an extended 1-4, not quite 4 along the baseline, but it was Winston by himself at the top of the key, and he had 3 guys on him. I have never seen that before. And, they ended up getting a 3-pointer for somebody, and they missed. Meanwhile, when they got it inside to Tillman, they double-teamed Tillman almost every single time. So Oakland came into this game, they're like, Tillman's not going to beat us on the block. We're double-teaming him, and we're shading 2.5 toward Cassius all the time. That's why Kithier gets wide open for 4 layups. Gabe Brown, 0 for 5 in three-point range. Henry did a better job driving and finishing. But now teams are starting to leave Henry uncovered. That's a huge problem until and unless Henry can capitalize on that. His confidence is coming around. Gabe Brown did a lot of shooting today. He's saying that he's in a shooting slump. His season percentage is not bad from three-point range. Gabe Brown is at 33%. which is 33% is the Mendoza line for three-point shooting. Michigan State for this offense needs their top wing shooters to be 38, 39, 40% shooters for this to be a Final Four type of team. When Rocket Watts comes back, obviously you cannot have him be a 20% three-point shooter. Shooting guard, you can't do that. The offense, the boat don't float when that's going on. Today in practice, now we're not supposed to talk a lot about specifics about what happened in practice, but Gabe Brown talked about it a little bit, and I think Izzo mentioned it a little bit on the radio show today. But basically, they were doing a pin down for Gabe Brown shoot medium range, and Izzo didn't like the arc on it, and Izzo had Brown do it again and again. They stopped practice, and he did it like 4 or 5 straight times. Gabe Brown told us that he's working on his arch on the shot, the medium range shot, and he's working on some of those finer points. Again, I'm not supposed to talk about specifics in practice. That one we probably can, but Gabe Brown is working on it. And that's something, in terms of not specific personnel or scouting information, I can tell you from a macro level, Izzo has been big on just basic shot mechanics in the last couple of practices. Today he was telling a player, he saw a player shoot and leaned back a little bit too far, and Izzo's like, no, get your nose over your toes, get your head over your feet, get set. He was really getting into the arch of Gabe Brown's shot. He was big on the passers, making sure they pass into the shooting pocket. Not here. A bad pass leads to a bad shot, quoting Judd Heathcote. Those intricacies, head over toes, pass in the pocket, arch on the shot, stuff you learned in middle school, or maybe didn't learn in middle school. But as there's no one to play tomorrow. They've started preparation for Northwestern, obviously, but they've had this boot camp chance to try to work on some of their weaknesses. Shooting is definitely a weakness. This team can't be good unless the shooting gets better. And today, boot camp, clinical, and trying to get the shooting back together, among other things. We'll probably get back to basketball here in a second, but let's move on to football. Well, let's go over to the YouTube area, see what kind of questions we have there. Now that you guys are done making fun of me when I choked on the audio at the beginning. I saw that first comment from somebody when somebody said Comp has trouble with the mic, and I was like, what are they talking about? Well, that should have clued me in. I'm a little slow on these things. All right, let's go. Rob South says, we'll go up to the top here. Rob South says, can we please talk about our quarterback situation a little going into next year? I'm tired of hearing from disgruntled Spartan fans about not having any talent. I personally think we have a few good ones. Rob South is an optimist. He's a glass half full guy, Rob South. Appreciate that. Quarterback, I've talked about Peyton Thorne since the Illinois game. He was the guy that was going to go into the field when Lewerke got his bell rung in that game. But then he didn't travel to Michigan. I'm not sure what that means. I've been hearing from various sources that they feel good about Peyton Thorne, and they're intrigued about Theo Day. One of the big failures of the season, they never gave Theo Day much of a chance in mop-up duty. He was in there against, one of the blowout losses, the Wisconsin game. They ran the wrong play. Anyway, hey, you're going to have to wait till spring practice. I'll be intrigued to see if they play a second-string quarterback in the bowl game. I think they'll want to, but I think Wake Forest is going to put it's going to be such a tense situation as they try to win a game. I'm not sure Michigan State's going to want to, D'Antonio's going to want to invest a series or two in Theo Day. I mean, Lombardi has started in the past. They know what Lombardi is. I think he's improved a little bit. I thought he played pretty well against Wisconsin. Didn't play well in the rain against Penn State. I think Lombardi's improved, but I think they feel like some of the other guys can and should and will be better than Lombardi next spring. Lombardi is not necessarily a guy that needs in-game reps the way Kirk Cousins did in 2010. So if Lombardi is indeed the number 2 guy right now, I don't think you need to give him any reps because this is going to be a tight bowl game. So Peyton Thorne, hearing good things about him, we'll see. All right. Spartan Tune 89. Is Burrow solid? Or Charbonnet mentioned him in a tweet. Talking about the kid from North Augusta or around that area. You know, I'm sure that Corey's probably already been talking about this. Barrow is his name, Simeon Barrow. The latest indications we had, things were looking positive. Maybe Corey knows more. I'll wait to see if Corey posted about that. When we talked about him in the podcast last week, indications were that things were good. I see Corey's got this answer down here. Just got here. Not sure what has been talked about, but Simeon Barrow, he is solid, and I fully expect him to sign on Wednesday, Corey says. So Simeon Barrow is still talking with Corey Robinson. So when these players are still talking to reporters that cover a specific team, that's usually a good indication that they're still strong that way. And by the way, Justin Rogers is still talking with Kentucky podcasters, reporters. All indications are Justin Rogers is going to stick with Kentucky. Meanwhile, it's been harder for Michigan State reporters to get a hold of Justin Rogers. That's always an indication of things. So right now, I would get the forecast looking good with Michigan State and Simeon Barrow, not looking good with Justin Rogers. Old Tuck from Ludington. Tiger Muskie country, he says. Comp, you continue to speak highly of Bowman. Because I respect your opinion, I'm curious. Why? The analytics tell a story of decline consistently since 2013. It's a good point. You know, the offensive line was good in 13. I don't know what the analytics said in 14 and 15, but I thought offensive line was good enough to get into the college football playoff. And yeah, Bowman had a big impact on 13. At some point, evaluation on the offensive line was not great in recent years, and you can see that with the current sophomores and juniors not being overtaken by the current freshmen. Bowman was tight ends coach at that point. Mark Staten was offensive line coach. Now last year the offensive line really struggled. This year it really struggled. Both times the offensive line was really beset by injuries. You know that. So it's a little bit of a damaged specimen in terms of trying to analyze how good or bad. Well, obviously they weren't good, but just how bad the offensive line. We can see how bad it was, but how bad it would have been if they would have been as healthy as they were in 13 and 14. They had some injuries in 13 and 14, but not the wholesale injuries they have this year. So it's kind of hard. Well, I just know that Bowman was a terrific offensive line coach at Ohio State, was very good here previously. So he's a great offensive. I think he's a very good offensive line coach. I continue to say that. He's been in charge of the offensive line for less than 12 months. Now, the offensive line this year, honestly, I mean, with the freshmen in there, at the end of the year, there were problems, as you would expect. So it's hard to judge that. I mean, you could have taken Warner, who's done a really good job at Michigan. You could have given him Michigan State's offensive line this year with the injuries, and they would have looked like they did. So I still like Bowman, but in terms of the decline that you're talking about, Bowman was not in charge all those years. I like him right now, as an offensive line mind and a coach. Whether or not he's the optimal guy in terms of the whole package, recruiting and everything from this point forward, I'm not sure. If he's into it and he wants to give the energy and do it, he is more than capable of providing that. And I thought that from what he was dealt this year and having to put 3 true freshmen on the field, they probably did about as good as any coach could have done with that situation. As for why true freshmen needed to get on the field that early, there's several reasons, but none of them are really Bowman's fault. So that's what I think about that. I'll stick with these because we have a lot of questions here. Old Tuck, rushing yards, offensive line in the pros, etc. Data doesn't agree with your evaluation of him. So anyway, like I said, Bowman wasn't in charge of the offensive line back then. Mark Staten was, and he was demoted last year. All right, Sparty7779, have you heard whether the MSU band will be at the bowl game? What about you and Paul? Yeah, Paul and I will be there. It'll be our third trip to the Big Apple in 6 weeks. So, it's an open-air press box. Not that you guys care, but you guys that kind of get cold in games, well, this time sports writers are going to have to do that too, which is no big deal. Wear layers, right? We're not going to get rained on because I think there's cover. It's a baseball press conference. What I'm worried about is typing in cold weather. The fingers don't work when it gets cold. You guys don't care about that. Yes, we will be there. The band, I've not heard about the band. I'm going to guess that the band will be there. The band has always gone to bowl games, haven't they? Maybe they didn't go to the Aloha Bowl. All right, now I've got to go through the audio problems here. Jeff Heck with a funny line. All right. Still going here. All right. Still scrolling. Jim Adams. Nils Deco asks, what kind of baggage does Lockett have? You guys know Nils Deco. Those of you that subscribe to SpartanMag.com. He's Amy on the message boards. He's my co-host for the Basketball Skull Session podcasts. We've not had one of those this year. We'll have to see if Nils has been able to watch all the games. Baggage for Lockett, I don't think there is any. I can see why he would ask that, as to why a 4-star recruit would take no other official visits and take an official visit late in the process like that. Take one official visit the week before signing day. Basically, it's an unorthodox recruitment because he was basketball first for a long time and very serious about basketball in the summer, so not a lot of visits in the summer. Then his football season. He was serious about, let's see, Nebraska. In terms of schools that were serious in him, Nebraska, Ohio State, Purdue, and Minnesota. Unofficial visit Minnesota, unofficial visit Ohio State. Ohio State I don't think offered. Minnesota kind of ran out of scholarships. Things are a little foggy as to what went on there, but Purdue and Nebraska very much wanted him to visit. They were telling him he could be a home run hitter type of guy, a difference maker, and he didn't visit. Brad Salem did a good job with him. He visited, he liked it, that was it. I don't think this is a deal where he's, Boo Boo Thompson or anything like that, Old Tuck, to use a name from the distant past. But I think he's good. I think he's good for the talent pool. Everything's on the up and up there. Let's go back to the mailbag. Spefton from East Lansing. What really accounted for the very poor in-state recruiting this year for Michigan State? Was the in-state talent low? Did we drop the ball and let other schools get the jump? Was there an effective negative recruiting strategy against us? A Blackwell hangover effect? It's really puzzling to see the glaring dearth of in-state recruits this year. Good question, good well-phrased question, and I would say it's a little bit of all of the above. Part of it we've mentioned before, that when Michigan State shuffled their coaches, there were some coaches that had certain recruiting roles that they may have left them behind a little bit as they moved to different coaching roles. For instance, Brad Salem was always a really good recruiter in the Chicago area, suburban Detroit. When he became offensive coordinator, he had to spend a lot of time in the offseason putting that offense together and doing all the research they wanted to do, including some places they visited. So when that happened, a lot of places, the offensive coordinator does very little recruiting, or the defensive coordinator does very little recruiting, or both. In some places, it's like that. So Salem, I don't know this for a fact, but it seems stepped off the gas. Michigan State stepped off the gas in the suburbs of Detroit, and that's okay when you have a new offensive coordinator, but someone else needed to go back in there and fill in for that, and I don't think anyone filled there. With the Blackwell thing, Michigan State's not going to recruit a Detroit King and some other places. Did that hurt? Probably. But you can still go in there and get in on some. Detroit recruiting, if I look at the top players in Michigan this year, in terms of what was going on in Detroit, number one, of course, Justin Rogers. And Rogers from the beginning looked like an SEC party. And even when he when his girlfriend tweeted that, hey, Justin Rogers is visiting Michigan State, everybody. Hey, everybody. Justin Rogers is on campus at Michigan State. Keep it secret, though. He looked at Michigan State. But I just wonder if that was a continuation of the SEC party. Anyway, he's from Oak Park. As far as Detroit guys, Rashawn Williams, wide receiver, talented, signed with is going to sign with Indiana. Michigan and Michigan State didn't offer him. I'm not sure what went on there. But Michigan State didn't offer. Detroit King guy, maybe they didn't think they had a chance. I'm not sure. In terms of Detroit guys, Penny Boone, number 9 player in the country, Detroit King. Michigan State was interested in him. I don't know if they ever offered, but they didn't go full blast. Signed with Maryland, 6'1", 225. We'll have to wait and see what he becomes. I've got my questions. But Michigan State goes out, gets a commitment from the kid from Georgia, Jordan Simmons. Still in on Frank Brown from Houston, visited this past weekend. And we've had trouble getting in for any information from Frank Brown. He's went quiet. If he speaks with anybody, he speaks with Corey. So we're waiting to see what happens there. And Michigan State's still trying to get Alante Brown. So Michigan State prioritized at some point Alante Brown, maybe later, but certainly Jordan Simmons over Penny Boone. So Boone goes to Maryland. Okay, it's a Detroit guy. In terms of other Detroit proper, DeAndre Buford, offensive lineman from Detroit King, he's going to sign with Kentucky. His offers, Auburn gave him a ceremonial offer. Iowa offered, and Michigan State offered. Now Buford, again, I'm not really sure whether that was the type of party Michigan State could cut into or not. And that's Detroit King. Again, that's Curtis Blackwell territory. So the chances of going in and getting him, probably not very good. In terms of players ranked in the top 35, in the Rivals.com in-state top 35, there's only 3 from Detroit. And all of them went to Detroit King. So that's that. In terms of, Justin Rogers, a Detroit kid who goes to Oak Park, he counts too. Malik Carr, Oak Park. Would he have been an in-state? Would he have been a Terry Samuel recruit? Yeah, definitely. Terry Samuel, Southeast Michigan recruiting, not good for Michigan State this year. That's been Terry Samuel's area. And it's not been good, and it's not been good. Yet, he goes down to Georgia and gets Jordan Simmons. Goes back to his hometown of Houston and gets a visit from Frank Brown. They get Frank Brown, that's going to help the recruiting class. So in one regard, not strong enough in Southeast Michigan. In the other regard, he got one of the best playmakers, maybe the best playmaker that they have right now. So how do you read that mixed bag in terms of recruiting, to answer your question? I'm not sure. Malik Carr, I think he was ranked number 26 or 27 last summer. I came back to the message board after seeing him at a couple of camps. I'm like, this kid's as good as anyone in the state. Big guy, tenacious, mean, good hands, catch radius, good hand selection. Runs, he's good. He's up to number 2 in the state, and rightly so, I think. I think he's excellent. 6'5". I think he's a monster. He's going to Purdue. I asked him, because Michigan State showed some interest, then they didn't, and then they pretty much backed out, and they didn't make his top 10. And I asked him, I said, so what happened? Why is Michigan State not in the top 10? What happened? I asked that question. I don't know if that's exactly how I phrased it, but I remember what he said back to me on a direct message. His response was, can't say. Can't say. So Michigan State didn't recruit him very hard. He's going to Purdue, and he's going to be a force there, I think. The other guys in state, Andre Seldon, the corner from Belleville, 5'9", Michigan State didn't offer. I think he's overrated. Number 5, Cornell Wheeler from West Bloomfield. I think he's the real deal. I think he's a good, hard-hitting linebacker, good football player. Number 6, Cameron Martinez out of Muskegon, 5'10", quarterback, going to be a DB athlete in college. Michigan State went after him. Ohio State got him. Hard to recruit against Ohio State, even in state sometimes. It's going to be interesting to see what Ohio State does with him. 5'10". He's good, 5'10", 185, but Ohio State gets the pick of the litter. So I could see a deal where Cam Martinez has trouble getting on the field. Number 7 in the state, Makari Page, going to Michigan from West Bloomfield. I think he's overrated. I mean, he's got a chance to be a solid college player, but I think, he's 6'3", 185. He's just kind of stiff. I don't see him being the number 7 player in the state. And the last time I said a Michigan in-state DB was overrated was Jalen Kelly Powell, when he was a 4-star. Who turned out to be right on that one? Now, Yassine, the kid from Northwestern, and the people that rank these things are right a lot. And I only take like one kid out of 30 that I disagree with. And I'll be wrong too quite often also. But I don't, Page, I think he's stiff. He's pretty solid, but I don't think he's numbered. I would not have him a 4-star. It's just my opinion. Yassine, I'm glad that Rivals made him a 4-star because I thought that he did really well in the camps. Excellent route runner. Looks like one of those Northwestern guys that you just can't cover. Like Michigan State's had those nightmare days, right? Michigan State tried to get in on him last week. They visited him, and I think Yassine even came to Michigan State this past weekend, but I think Michigan State's full now. Corey could probably answer that better. But anyway, Michigan State had a shot at him. Did Michigan State get in late with Yassine? Yes, they did. Now, I think he grew an inch and got better, whereas Michigan State made a good early evaluation on Ricky White. They were late with their evaluation on Yassine, ended up wanting both of them, ended up getting Lockett, so that works out. Enzo Jennings, number 10 in the state from Oak Park, good player, 4-star, deserves it. It's going to Penn State. Michigan State was late getting in on him. Michigan State was late to offer him. I asked him about it at camp, and he said, hey, D'Antonio told me, hey, we are really serious about our defensive back offers. We only offer defensive backs if we truly mean it. So Michigan State got in on him, and Enzo Jennings told me it's not too late. I don't hold it against them, but, I mean, Michigan State was already trailing Penn State at that point. Ends up at Penn State. Number 11, Braden McGregor. Some people have him ranked higher. Good player, good defensive end. I asked him at the camp. He'd cut his list down to 10 schools. And Michigan State wasn't one of them. And I said, why was that? And he said he hadn't heard from Michigan State. He liked him initially, heard from him initially, didn't hear from them. That was like last May, probably. So my point is, when all that was going on with the coaching shuffle and Michigan State, what's happened in state, it's all those things. Blackwell, a little bit late, I think, because of the changing, the shuffle of the coaching. So that's the top 10. In terms of offers outside of the top 10, they offered Dallas Fincher, got him. Josh Preby, the offensive lineman from Northwestern, goes to Northwestern. Academics were a big part of that. It's difficult to compete with Northwestern with academics. I don't know much about Jordan Turner, the linebacker from Farmington. I got to watch some more film of him. Michigan State offered number 16, Christian Fitzpatrick later, goes to Louisville, or committed to Washington State, ends up at Louisville playing with his brother. Michigan State late, and he was a little bit disappointed that Michigan State didn't offer, but Michigan State finally did come, and I think they offered, but they definitely showed interest later. But, the wide receivers, a lot of good wide receivers this year. Michigan State was serious about Ernest Sanders, but he ends up going to Kentucky. But Tommy Guajardo, the tight end from Dearborn, 6'4", might not be all of 6'4", but he's an athletic kid. I mean, I like his film. I'm not sure how all the size and everything will translate to the college level. He plays hard. He's got a lot of enthusiasm. He's number 21 in the state. Would I trade him for Andre Seldon or Makari Page right now? No. First of all, I like him as a tight end. Secondly, there's not many tight ends. The football gods do not make many tight ends these days. That's one reason I think Guajardo, the best tight end in the state of Michigan, was a good one for Michigan State. So I think Michigan State was late on Dorian Mauisi. I've got that pronunciation somewhere. Let me see if I can find it. Mauisi. He's the kid from U of D Jesuit. And offered him. I liked his film. Mauisi, yeah. But kind of too late. Ends up going to Duke, I think it was. Let's go back to the mailbag. Ronnie M. from Grosse Ile, Michigan. 2 questions. Do you ever go ice fishing? And if not, why not? Ice fishing. Yes, I do. There's a little bass lake about 500 yards from here. And The bass don't bite in the winter unless you hit them in the nose with it and make them mad, because if the water's under 53 degrees, they kind of hibernate like a salamander. You guys know that, right? But the sunfish, the bluegills, they're still active in the winter. So if you go ice fishing, you'll get panfish, bluegill. There's no crappie down here. And pike, but no bass. It's a bass lake. It's a bass pond. It's a big pond. But yeah, I do. I want to do that more this year. I haven't done it a lot lately. I'm a novice still with it. I would have been a better ice fisherman if I had done it more 15, 20 years ago, back when I was a pretty good drinker. I'm not very good at drinking anymore. I used to be really good at drinking. I used to be really good. I'm not very good at it anymore. Makes me tired and everything. I wish I were, but you get old, you know. Question number 6, 428 Grove Street from Elmhurst, Illinois says, who do you expect to get reps at middle linebacker in the bowl game? Any chance we see Ed Warner or Luke Fulton in the Pinstripe Bowl? Fulton, I think there's a chance maybe on special teams. Warner, he played special teams against Michigan, but I think he's a little further from getting into the playing group. In terms of the middle linebacker, I think it's going to be Tyreek Thompson in the middle again. I think they're going to want Antoine Simmons in the slot again, like he was against, was it Maryland? Because Wake Forest will hit you with the bubble screen. They'll get it out there. They'll see on film the problems that Michigan State had with the bubble screen against Michigan and against Indiana. And Wake Forest will replicate that. They will want to replicate that, first of all. Secondly, they do the bubble screen a lot anyway. They've got 2 receivers that each have about 1,000 yards receiving this year. A little 6-footer, not a little 6-footer, but a 6-footer by the name of Kendall Hinton. 70 receptions, 953 yards. He's a former quarterback. I think this is his first year as a full-time receiver. 70 catches, 953 yards. That's the guy they'll use on bubble screens. The other guy, the bigger target, Sage Surratt, 6'3". He's got 1,000 yards receiving this year, 66 catches, 11 touchdowns. And Wake Forest is going for 9 wins for only the 3rd time in school history. 9 wins, 3rd time in school history. We posted the video of Dave Clawson, the Wake Forest coach, over at SpartanMag.com, and I was kind of expecting SpartanMag.com subscribers to give me their take on what they thought about Clawson and just in terms of how he handled himself in the interviews. He's not your usual football coach type of guy. He's more of a type of guy that you could see end up coaching at Northwestern or Stanford or Vanderbilt or something like that. Judging by past coaches at those places. I've thought that if D'Antonio had stepped down this year, I would have thought Clawson would have been a guy that Michigan State would want to interview, that would do well to interview. And like I said last week in the podcast, if Wake Forest wins this game, I would think that Michigan State, that'll be right in front of a lot of important Michigan State people. And if the time comes soon, in the near future, for D'Antonio to retire, if Clawson beats Michigan State in this bowl game, it would, a lot of times that's the way coaching decisions, that has an impact in coaching decisions. Sometimes the guy that beats the team ends up becoming the coach of that team. It happens a lot in college sports. Just saying. I've not been hearing any rumblings along those lines. Culturally, how would he fit? He's originally from the Niagara Falls region of New York, and he coached a little bit at Bowling Green, so he knows the lay of the land a little bit, and he's an academic-oriented guy, and he's showing on offense that he's innovative in a lot of ways. But right now, Michigan State's got the best coach in the last 60 years, and he wants to keep trudging forward, and he's competitive, and he knows that he thinks he's got a chance to do some things. In terms of D'Antonio, I think I've said it before, and I'll say it all off season, that right now, the task of trying to get to 8-4 this year, or even 7-5, or just to get the thing restarted again toward 8 or 9 wins, it's as hard right now as it was when he took over in 2006. As good of a job, as well as he did back then, this is to get it back up to 10 wins again, if he can ever do that, is going to be just as steep of a climb from this point forward as it was back then. Because they've lost some traction, and because I don't know if they're going to keep all the coaches or if they're going to bring new people in. It's a difficult task right now. Let's see. Let's move on to Another question here in the mailbag. Greened. It's a past tense word that doesn't exist, but anyway, that's his name. Greened. He says, any rumblings about football practices? Who's up? Possible position changes? Anything? All right, so they started practice on Friday, last Friday. They practiced Saturday, Sunday. They practiced today. I drove by down on Shaw Road, and I saw the people up in the towers. You know, they have coaches, they have the video people up in the towers, and they were up there. Practice was about ready to start. They had the lights on. It was 32 degrees. I looked at my thermometer. It was 32 degrees. I asked some people, some of the media relations people, I said, did they practice outside today? Just trying to get a lay of the land because I figured someone might be asking about that. And they said, yes, they did practice today outside, just a few periods, and then finished up inside. So, I mean, if they were playing in Florida, they wouldn't bother practicing outside. But I can't remember Michigan State ever utilizing the outdoor fields in December in preparation for a bowl game, ever. This is the first time. I mean, even back in I don't know about 1938 when they played in the Orange Bowl, but certainly in this, 1953 when they're getting ready for the 1954 Rose Bowl, they practiced on the dirt inside Jennison Fieldhouse. There was a dirt infield to the track there. Same thing in 53, 54. Not sure about the 60s, what they did indoors to practice. But they're out there practicing on December 16th, 32 degrees for a cold weather bowl game. Out there for a few periods. So anything in terms of any position changes, any things like that? No, we have not heard anything. Like I said, there are interviews tomorrow being Tuesday. Player interviews, maybe some assistant coaches, I'm not sure. I don't know if D'Antonio will talk tomorrow or not. I have not read the fine print on the press release. We'll get through the mailbag here, then I'll go back over to, let's pause, go back to basketball for a second. All right, so, all right, I don't know who posted this, but they posted from the east side of Detroit. I didn't write down his name, apologize about that. He says, can you give a quick rundown on the current commitments for the basketball team, recruiting commitments, like where they are skill-wise and where you think they'll make an impact when they come in next year? Well, there's two right now. A.J. Hogard, 6'2", 190 from Huntington Prep, originally from Coatesville, Pennsylvania. He needs to get in a little better shape. He's got some scoring ability, combo guard type of guy, sees the court well. Just a good all-around guard. Where would he fit next year? Let's see, you don't have Winston anymore. I don't think he's a true command the ball point guard. I think that's Rocket Watts next year. And Izzo loves the way Rocket Watts, he loves everything about him. Everything except that three-point shooting right now, and he thinks that'll get better. Lawyer, got 10, 11 minutes against Oakland. And every time he gets minutes now, it's still developmental, trying to get progress with him. And he made some quarterbacking errors against Oakland. I mean, say what you want about him defensively and everything, but there were two errors he made. There was a Horns screen roll replace out to the four-man, back over to him on the wing, and he had Tillman down low, 45-degree angle. Perfect. Did I mess up the microphone again? Perfect angle for an entry pass. He's open, and he didn't deliver the pass. I mean, if anything, Foster Lawyer's got to be a great decision maker and passer. Has to be, because of his limitations in other regards. So I'm not here to pile on him, because I know there's a lot of people that aren't real, that have been critical of him, and I don't want to fan those flames because I don't believe in being critical of amateur college kids. But in terms of analyzing his game, I mean, when you run screen roll replace, then over to the wing, it's got to be Bam in there right now to Tillman. He could have gotten it. He had a guy sealed. He could have gone to work with a drop step before the double team came, and he just didn't pass it, which is the way I used to play. I used to make mistakes like that all the time back when I was a very bad third-string point guard at Podunk High School. Now, then later, they run a play, and he throws an entry pass, and he didn't take an extra dribble to get down to 45 degrees. It was on the left wing. And that's when Izzo was talking to him. Remember, if you watch the game, Izzo was like yelling at him, and he held the ball, and the referee wanted the ball, and Izzo just held the ball, and Izzo just flipped it. That was that play. So in one instance, he didn't pass it. Then the next time, he passed it before he got to an optimal level. So that's Lawyer. He had a lot of minutes because it was a blowout situation, and Rocket Watts is out. That was an important time for Lawyer to run the offense and do better. They still think he can shoot it well enough. He made a three-pointer late in that game. Scored 7 points, free throws, technical foul free throws. But they're still going to need more from him. So can Hoggard come in? Can it be Hoggard and Watts as the point guards next year? Maybe. Michigan State is still recruiting the kid from Montreal, Kareem Maine. Really just started in earnest. Izzo went and saw him on Friday. Izzo liked what he saw. A big kid with a lot of ability and wingspan. You know, I was talking to Rico Beard about this, and I think Rico's going to have SpartanMag to go about it a little bit, among other things. And, Rico was asking around the recruiting area as to whether this kid Maine could possibly just go straight to the international pros rather than going 1 year of college. Indications we are getting is that he's probably going to go 1 year of college. That's the indication right now. And indications are that Michigan State is expecting to get a visit from him. And he won't decide until April or May, but maybe even March, but probably April. And I would expect an unofficial visit and then at least one visit, possibly two from him. And Michigan State's right in there. I don't know who's going to be the top competitors with Maine right now, but you're asking these two recruits, Hoggard and Sissoko, and what impact they have. Well, what impact Hoggard plays and what position he plays is going to be impacted. That's not a verb, but there will be an impact based on whether Michigan State gets Kareem Maine. Also an impact as to how much Foster Lawyer comes around. All right, so in Sissoko, 6'9", 225. And, Izzo talked about these guys in November. So go back and Google SpartanMag.com, Izzo basketball signing day. It should come up. Sissoko, still new to basketball. Paul Konerdijk did a great feature story about Sissoko and how he became a recruitable athlete. Really an amazing story. But watching his film, there's comparisons to Olajuwon, but Olajuwon's one of the greatest big men ever. But there's one area that reminds me of Olajuwon, and that's defensively. And it's not necessarily shot blocking. It's his quickness for steals. Olajuwon used to be great in terms of making steals as a big man. Quickness, former soccer goalie. Quickness, covering ground, anticipating, but just the great length and plus athleticism. I mean, Olajuwon was a freak, right? Sissoko, with some of his steals, reminded me of that a little bit. Now, Izzo likes the fact that Sissoko thinks every rebound is his. That's Izzo's quote. He thinks every rebound is his. And Izzo's talked about these guys because they're signed. His back to the basket game is not bad, and he's learning fast there. So where would Sissoko help? I mean, you've got Marble coming back. You've got Hall at the 4. Bingham is blossoming. Not blossoming yet, but Bingham is getting better like every 10 days. And he looked better in practice today. He's doing things like scoring through some contact now. And he's blocking shots and altering shots and he stays down and alters shots. He doesn't jump himself out of the play and draw fouls. He's able to alter shots while staying down. And my question about Bingham was with those long arms and the lengthy awkwardness. He's not very awkward. My question was whether he'd be able to move laterally for the ball screen defense like they need it. And he is doing that. So being able to play ball screen defense and knowing where to be is enabling him to stay on the court. And the more he's on the court, the better he's getting. Bingham is improving, and he's got a high ceiling. You guys all know that. Well, Tillman, will he be back next year? He's having a good senior season, but maybe not that explosive season that you might expect. So what impact Sissoko has, it'll depend on whether Tillman comes back. You'll have Tillman, you have Marble, and Marble's still doing some good things. He's still getting his sea legs. So real early to say. And roster management, the coaches will tell you that roster management is one of the most difficult parts of their job because of what we just said. We don't know who's going to be here. So if you can get some interchangeable parts, that helps. Let's go back to the YouTube questions. Nils Deco, the last question I asked was about, he asked what kind of baggage does Lockett have? We talked about that. He says, we don't have anyone to take the top off the defense. He says, we don't have anyone to take the top off the defense. That means on offense at wide receiver, they don't have anybody. Michigan State does not have anybody to take the top off the, off the defensive secondaries. The safeties need to get deep as the deepest, whether it's one deep or two deep. If you have someone really threatening deep, they'll take the top off, then you can hit some digs beneath it. And he's right. Michigan State doesn't really have that speed guy to go deep. I mean, Speedy Naylor, in theory, can do it. Didn't play much this year. But, yeah, and, Terry Samuel made that point 3 or 4 years ago that they had, 2 years ago, that they hadn't had anyone like that since Keyshawn Martin. So there are a lot of wide receivers out there these days, especially, and good, polished wide receivers. And I think that the proliferation of 7-on-7 football in the offseason has helped these wide receivers become better and better. In the state of Michigan, that's probably the state of Michigan's strongest position year after year is wide receiver. So they're out there, but do they have the speed burners to take the top off a defense? Like a KJ Hamler. Like the best I've seen Michigan State play against in recent years was Calvin Ridley for Alabama in 2015. I mean, that guy. And Alabama's got more people like that this year. But yeah, Michigan State's got, this year they were down in receiver. We talked about that. But in terms of taking the top off the defense, can Lockett do that? Does he have that gear? Does Ricky White have that gear? Does Ian Stewart? I don't think Ian Stewart quite does. He's kind of a bigger guy. I mean, Benny Fowler really didn't have that gear. Do any of these guys have the gear? I don't know that they do. I don't know that they don't. Ricky White has some explosiveness, short area explosiveness. Lockett averaged 20 yards on bubble screens this year. Like I said, Purdue and Nebraska were telling him that they think he's a home run guy. I don't know what his speed is. I've not seen it. I'm not sure. I've watched film. I've not seen good film. Nils Deco says it's how Jalen Hurts does it. He's the best at it. He's the best at what? He's talking about the quarterback. Old Tug telling me that Dotson has a torn Achilles. Let's see. Spartan Tune. Rob South. Drew Brees just broke Peyton Manning's record for touchdowns. Corey Robinson. I will double down on Thorne. I talked to a lot of current players and their dads from my time covering them in recruiting. Yeah, Peyton Thorne. That's the buzz. I've not seen it. I mean, I think that his film is intriguing. Got a chance. Like I say at the quarterback position, as a program, you don't recruit a quarterback, you recruit a competition. And Brian Lewerke's gone, and Michigan State's going to have a competition. Peyton Thorne, Theo Day, Rocky Lombardi. You know what Lombardi is. If anyone surpasses him, probably a good sign. That's many chapters down the road. And when they play in the spring, they will have scrimmages, and we won't hear a word about it. Well, some of our sources might say a few things, but there won't be any stats, that's for sure. Hayden Vischer. I'll get to his question later. Let's go ahead and we'll finish all these mailbag questions. I apologize for the sound problems earlier on. It's the way it is. We're a low budget operation, people. I should have some of you guys over and just have a few beers and have you guys here do this. I won't even charge admission. The kids have school tomorrow. Won't be able to make too much noise. Anyway, question from the mailbag from Shafee033. Any updates on Justin Rogers or Alante Brown coming out of the weekend? I talked about Justin Rogers a minute ago. All indications are, it's back in Kentucky. And Kentucky coaches had an in-home, I don't know if it was in-home. They visited a school last week, and it looked, he tweeted out a photo. He was hugging the coaches, and it looked pretty lovey-dovey. So I think that's Kentucky all the way there. And they probably answered the bell for whatever he was wanting. Alante Brown, I haven't heard anything. You know, he visited Nebraska, Virginia Tech, and just the vibe seems that he is scaling back from Michigan State. Whether or not Michigan State scaled back as well, I'm not sure. But in the meantime, Michigan State went out and locked up Lockett. Alante Brown can play running back or wide receiver. Lockett is just a receiver. Michigan State went and got, or they're going after Frank Brown. That spoke volumes that they were moving on from Alante Brown, or at least he was a backup plan, or maybe even just a plan A and plan A1. They're both equal plan A's. If Michigan State gets Frank Brown, Alante Brown is probably out of a scholarship. Is Michigan State reading the situation to mean that Alante Brown is leaving anyway? Maybe so. Could we see a situation in which Frank Brown ends up not signing and taking visits later? Possibly. We are still trying to get information from Frank Brown. Corey might even have something here that I've not seen. A couple more questions here from the mailbag. Maul, M-A-U-L, Maul 286 from Italia. He's posting from Italy. He says, what's your best guess for a starting 22 next year? And man, I'm not going to go over the starting 22. I can't do that, right? I'd bore everybody. And that's more for a winter football type of thing. Right now, focusing on recruiting, basketball season, bowl game. We can talk about that stuff. If I'd gotten to this question earlier and we didn't have any other questions, I probably could have delved into it. But you're asking me about starting offensive line. I'll give you offensive line. I think Arcuri is the left tackle, A.J. Arcuri. Did some pretty good things this year. Just getting his feet wet. There's good potential there if he stays healthy. Cole Chewins is still in the picture. He's only played 6 games in the last 2 years, but he wants to be a football player. He doesn't feel like he's done, even though he's going to get his master's this month. He is rehabbing with the thought of playing next year in the front and the back of his mind. What would Cole Chewins look like next fall? I have no idea. But I'm going to say A.J. Arcuri is the left tackle. Right tackle, Jordan Reed. I think Jordan Reed had a good last month of the season. Played his best football of his career the last month of the season. Both run blocking and pass blocking. And, excuse me, when my voice goes, it's time to sign off. That gets back to the Jim Adams thing, right? So I think Curry and Reed. Center, it's either Matt Allen or Nick Samak. They both have experience. Duplain has experience at left guard, but they need better. If Matt Allen becomes the center, I think there's a chance it's Duplain versus Samak at left guard. Right guard, Kevin Jarvis. Everybody stays healthy. That's a pretty good offensive line. I might have to sign off. I'm going to go back to the YouTube questions and sign off because the voice is done. If you're wondering, this is why I can't have a daily talk show. I don't know, I just yelled too much when I was a kid at sporting events. True. What other questions do we have here? I've got to rewind here and find my place. All right, Rob South. I've been big on Thornton too. I'm glad others are as well. Tyler Miller, is Alante Brown announcing his commitment tomorrow? And what percentage do you think he will go to the Spartans? I just talked about him a minute ago. Percentage on Alante Brown, I'm going to say less than 33%. Just a hunch. Not hearing anything. It's really quiet with him. And he's given information in the past in short bursts. He's not a guy to give a long answer on something. It's just short bursts like, hey, great visit. I'm excited. But now, even those short bursts, to Michigan State reporters, it's dried up, which is usually a tell. Like Corey Robinson says, I would take the field on Alante Brown over the Spartans right now. I would agree with that. Nils Deco, if Thorne is the quarterback, what is the over-under on wins? Over-under on wins, if Thorne's the quarterback, 6. It's a lot of unproven players and a tough schedule. In Vegas, the over-under might even be, I don't know, probably 6. Nils asking all the tough questions. Good questions. Michael Maher. Corey, do you expect everyone to sign? Other than Simmons. Corey says yes. Corey Robinson, our recruiting reporter, for those of you that can't see the chat. Robinson says Terry Samuel was lead recruiter for Jordan Simmons, Tommy Guajardo, and Ricky White. All right, so Guajardo, he got that one done, and that was suburban Detroit in Dearborn, and that was in the summer. So that was early recruiting. That was not 11th hour recruiting. That was a guy they pinpointed, went after, and got it done. So whereas they were, in my perception, tardy on some, they were not tardy on Guajardo. But if they're not tardy on Guajardo, maybe the fact, the observation that they were late, maybe they did their evaluation, and whether it be the player or off the field or whatever, maybe that had something to do with them not recruiting some others, like Braden McGregor. I don't know. But some guys seem to feel that Michigan State didn't recruit them very hard, but Guajardo did get recruited hard. The year before, when Michigan State got in early with Devontae Dobbs, Jaron Mangum, and a lot of those guys, Michigan State was in early, and Michigan was in late, and a lot of those recruits resented Michigan. This year, I mean, Kentucky recruited Michigan better than Michigan State did, theoretically. We got two guys. And Kentucky's doing well in Ohio. But how are they doing it? I don't know. It's Calipari country. It's Adolph Rupp country, right? All right, so Rick Nash. Why isn't Simmons going to sign next week? Or Wednesday, he means. Corey Robinson says he wants to get the whole family on campus to check out Michigan in January. And Corey telling us that the Yassine visit was canceled and they got Lockett. So Michigan State was trying to cover their bases in terms of plan Bs at wide receiver. Yassine trying to flip him from Northwestern. And then the kid from Davison, but they got Lockett. So that's pretty strong when you have your A and then you have a couple of Bs and Cs. Not that they were for sure going to be able to flip Yassine, but Yassine was happy to get that offer, and he was listening to Michigan State for sure. But in the end, Michigan State recruited from a position of strength at wide receiver, so that's a good way to finish there. Terry Thomas says, always great information from Jim. Thanks. One of the best out there. Thanks, Terry. I appreciate you saying that. Paul Sadler from Mission Viejo, California says, sorry if you've already talked about it. Any concerns that we have not landed a big D lineman for the 2020 class? Yeah, I'd say so, because Michigan State was going after Justin Rogers at defensive tackle. I think Maverick Hanson's going to be an inside guy. But I don't know if he's in this category. I mean, you've got Mallory, still a relatively young guy. You've got Jalen Hunt, who they're pretty happy with, really happy with. Redshirted him. You'd like to get one every year, at least, because they are. It's a rare talent to find those excellent defensive tackles. Slade's going to be a junior next year, redshirt sophomore, and of course Naquan Jones will be a senior. But you're right, there's no big-bodied defensive tackle. You're not going to find many of those in the transfer portal anyway. There might be some out there, but I mean, those are guys you need to groom in your program for 2 or 3 years. So they don't get one this year. So it has to be a big area of emphasis next year, I would imagine. Disappointed? Yeah, they still have, they must, I don't know. That's a good question I'll have to answer I'll have to ask on Wednesday. Disappointed, I don't know. It's a big word, but good observation there, Paul Sadler. Terry Thomas, what's your prediction on who will be the starting quarterback come next season? The prediction? Now you want a prediction. Gosh. I don't have, I don't know. That is 33-33-33. And that's a lot to give Peyton Thorne a 33, considering the other two. Considering the other guy, one guy has started and won some games. The other guy hasn't started but has a little more experience. Theo Day's pretty good athlete. Looks like a quarterback. Good frame. I don't know. I don't have a prediction on that right now. Sorry. Desert Spartan from Chandler, Arizona. Hockey team seems solid. Big series split last weekend versus the Sun Devils. You are right. They're solid. And they were number 18 in the country last weekend, and they lost to Arizona State. Split with Arizona State. I don't know where they'll be ranked now, but Danton Cole is really excited about the way they ended the first half of the season. Now they get about a couple weeks off, send the players home for Christmas. They'll be gone for a week. I don't know if Krieger made the World Juniors team or not. I think that's still being determined. But they'll come back for the Great Lakes Invitational. And I'd say it's the best first half of a season in I don't know how many years. I know they're just 9-8 or 8-7, whatever the record is. But they've played a lot of top 10 teams. And Arizona State was what? They were like 8-4. Arizona State's going to win a lot of games. Their goalie was outstanding. They're good. They've got skill. They're good. And Michigan State did a great job being down 3-1 in that game. I didn't see the first period of the first game when they fell behind 2-0. I'm not sure what happened there. Maybe I'll go back and watch it on Big Ten Plus. That's where I watch most of the games if I can't get to the rink. The way they came back down 3-1 in the third period, Kodorinko with a real good play to get his shot on goal and go and get his own rebound and score. I mean, he's a horse. He's a grown man. He's an NHL player as a senior doing his thing at the first line center. He's excellent. Had a scoring drought there for a while. Came back strong with a big goal the week before. Can't even remember who they played the week before. But, yeah, they're competitive. They're exciting. Coming back to tie that game up 3-3 looked great. Then they gave up a goal. Lost the game 4-3. Logan Lambden, fastest guy on the team, but lost a battle behind the red line, behind the goal. So in his own goal didn't get possession. So Arizona State maintained possession 2 passes later. From the point, sneaks it in 4-3. They lose. Came back the next day 1-0 shutout. So Letherman, 3 shutouts this year. Was among the nation's leaders in save percentage. So excellent first line. They moved Saliba off the first line this week. Mueller, the freshman from Switzerland, came back with a big goal during that 3-1 comeback. And so they're getting production first, second, and third lines, making fewer mistakes, playing well as a team, playing well along the boards, getting goaltending. Yeah, I think it'll be fun, and I'd make them the favorite to win the GLI. And I'd like to go to that, but I think I'm going to be going out of town around New Year's. I don't know. I'd like to do both. But yeah, hockey is worth watching, and they were excited. Dan Cole's excited that they won. We'll get back to football in one second. One more minute on hockey. Dan Cole's excited to beat Arizona State because in the pairwise rankings, now that you've beaten Arizona State, you will get credit for every game that they win and that they have won. And the week before, they beat Denver and tied Denver in a two-game series. And Denver was ranked number 4 in the country, I think. So the pairwise rankings, getting that win against Arizona State is huge for pairwise rankings. It's the first time I've heard Michigan State talking about pairwise rankings in a long time. Because pairwise rankings they don't have a selection committee for the NCAA tournament in hockey. It's strictly pairwise computer rankings. You have to finish in the top 14 or 15, depending on how many at-larges get in, or how many conference champions upsets there are, things like that. So Michigan State in December getting a pairwise ranking win, just a different mindset and different psychology for the program. Good crowd on Friday. They had a 5 o'clock, or on Sunday, they've had a 5 o'clock face-off Sunday. Had a good raucous crowd, so people are excited about that. And there's a lot of people out there thirsty for Michigan State hockey to play some big, meaningful games at Munn Ice Arena, which we haven't seen in a long time. But I think it's happening here later this winter. I think there's going to be some big games with a lot on the line. Michigan State's going to be up there. Penn State's probably going to win the Big Ten, but you don't know. I mean, things can change in a hurry. But Michigan State's right there, and it's exciting, and the future's exciting too. What do we have here? Corey Robinson, he's talking about Simeon Barrow, Hayden Fisher. Corey, there was talk about a defensive back from Ohio possibly flipping. Is that happening still? And if so, Wednesday? And Corey says he's not expecting Carrington or Valentine. Or he's expecting Carrington Valentine to sign with Kentucky. As far as Sammy Anderson goes, I think he's committed to Cincinnati, and I don't think there's a flip going on there either. Although Michigan State, I think, was talking there a little bit. You know, Michigan State's gotten some 11th hour flips here in the last couple of years. We're not hearing anything, but we weren't hearing about Maverick Hansen either when it happened. So I'm not going to rule it out. Ken Chen from Redwood City, California. See, we're getting these West Coast guys because it's 11 o'clock Eastern time right now, and they're done with dinner. They want to talk Spartan sports. That's great. Ken Chen, Redwood City, California. Do you think when Watts returns, it means Lawyer will no longer get backup point guard minutes? I don't think they've decided that yet. And, well, when Watts returns, he's got to get reacclimated. He's got to get confidence back in his game. So they may not want to pile too much on his plate. You know, if Lawyer had played well against Oakland, seriously, these things are just being decided right now as we speak. And Izzo is putting a lot of pressure on Lawyer. And he's on his case. And when Lawyer makes a good play, he's getting good pats on the back, but he's getting a lot of pressure too. So, I can't tell you that answer in terms of inside knowledge because I don't think there is inside knowledge. I don't think they know yet. They're just still playing Lawyer every game and seeing what it looks like. And Rocket Watts probably not going to play against Northwestern. Izzo called him doubtful. And then they play Eastern Michigan on Saturday. Izzo would like to hold Watts out until after Christmas if they can. Rocket Watts had the boot off today in practice. Did not practice. He was on the court but didn't practice. So I'm expecting him to stay out. And when he comes back, that's a great question. But if you're asking for my prediction, I'm going to say that Lawyer will be the backup point guard when Watts comes back for at least a couple of games. And we'll see how well he handles it or doesn't handle it. And we will see how well he handles it against Northwestern and against Eastern Michigan on Saturday. Paul Sadler. Thanks, Corey. Back at you. Would you add Spencer Brown as a future defensive tackle? Yes. Good one, Paul. Good one, Paul Sadler. You know, I've not heard that about Spencer Brown, but if you go back and check the old notes, when I watched him in high school, I always thought that he was eventually an interior defensive lineman. I think he's a big body guy with some straight line speed and some straight line horsepower. As a pass rusher, he's not a turn the corner guy. As an offensive lineman, I told you I didn't like him as an offensive lineman. It's not that I hated him. It's just that he had a long way to go. Lateral movement, balance, all the moving parts. I thought, as an athlete, I thought he was an interior defensive lineman. That is a great point. I'd kind of forgotten about that, actually. And you heard a lot about freshman offensive linemen this year. Of course, the three that played. Spencer Brown was a 4-star guy. I thought he was a 3-star project, defensive lineman. You didn't hear anything about Spencer Brown, and he enrolled early, went through spring practice, went through August camp, didn't get on the field, and I don't think he ever got close to getting on the field. Good kid, wants to work hard, wants to do the right thing. I think he could be a Joel Heath-type defensive tackle. Thanks for listening. Hayden Vischer. Is Lockett an early enrollee? Corey Robinson says, I do not believe Lockett is an early enrollee. I will check around on that, but I believe he's a traditional summer enrollee. That's my that's my understanding too. But Corey's going to check around on that. We appreciate that. I will tell you that Paul Konendijk spoke with Aaron Lockett's high school coach, and there'll be a feature story on that coming soon. Chicago Spartan. Thorne's the real deal, according to MSU on the board. MSU being Michigan State University is the guy's name, and he's connected. Michigan State University, the guy known as Michigan State University is connected. And Chicago Spartan says, I believe he has a brother or cousin that played for Thorne's grandfather. All right, Corey Robinson. Tough to say with Spencer Brown, defensive tackle. He goes on to answer that question. Doors Fan 91 chiming in. First time we've heard from Doors Fan. He's tardy. I don't feel tardy. He says, any news on Jacob Isaiah or James Ohanba? when an offensive lineman is a redshirt sophomore, Ohamba had to reshape his body a little bit, and that was still a work in progress. But when an offensive lineman is a sophomore, what is Ohamba now? I used to know this stuff off the top of my head, but now that I'm old, I'm not as good at this stuff as I used to be. I know a lot of you guys already know the answer right now. I think Doris Fan just told me. He's a redshirt freshman this year. No? Yeah. He's a redshirt freshman. All right, so he's not that old. All right, so it's not that egregious that Ohamba was surpassed by Devontae Dobbs at tackle. Ohamba's 6'4", maybe he's a guard. I've not heard for sure. He had to reshape that body. They like his attitude. Dimitri Douglas, of course, in the portal. Not a good development there. But anytime that you don't hear about Dimitri Douglas, Spencer Brown, James Ohamba, it doesn't mean the end of the world. But in that type of situation, with an offensive lineman being surpassed by a true freshman, in that type of situation, no news is bad news, usually. So these freshmen have leapfrogged them a little bit. It's up to them to have a big off-season, get on the stick, see if they compete in the spring. But no, I've not heard much about Ohamba. Isaiah's gotten on the field a little bit as a blocking back and short yardage. I think he's close. He might be the closest out of all that group. Khalifa, of course, got on the field a little bit. Was it against Rutgers and struggled? I don't know if he played much against Maryland, but Isaiah I don't think Isaiah is behind schedule. Now he's not ahead of schedule like Duplain is, but there'll be interesting competition there with the freshmen that have already played and then the people behind them trying to get on the field. Doors Fan, he was late because he was at the Izzo show tonight. Izzo playing the accordion, I'm sure. And then he was over at Dagwoods, over on the corner of Kalamazoo and Clippert. Hope he had a good time at Dagwoods. Hope everybody had a good time here at Spartan Mag Live. Maybe we'll do this thing from Dagwoods sometime. Doors Fan, tell them you want me over there. And if they pay Mad Dog prices, maybe we'll get over there. That'd be fun, wouldn't it? Anyway, appreciate everybody hanging out. 110 minutes again. Sorry about the audio problems. Sorry about my voice. That's about it. Hope everybody had a great time. Hope everybody has a great week heading in during the holiday season. This is all holiday season. Hope everybody has great holidays. Time with your family. Spartan Mag subscribers, we appreciate each and every one of you. I forgot to tell you guys to subscribe to SpartanMag.com if you're not already a subscriber, but most of you guys are subscribers. But those of you that aren't, please go over to SpartanMag.com. Subscribe. Subscribe now, 25% off. You get a $75 Nike gift card if you're still watching. Bless your heart. If you're still watching right now, then you need to be a subscriber. Jack. Anyway. Okay, Desert Spartan, you'd fly in from Phoenix if we do it at Dagwoods. You tell the people at Dagwoods, and we will take all of our sophisticated equipment over there, and we'll have a good time doing it. Anyway, Jim Comparoni, publisher, SpartanMag.com, part of the Rivals.com network. We're proud of that. We're proud to have you as a subscriber. We're glad that you were in here watching. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Subscribe to SpartanMag.com if you haven't already. We have a lot of fun. Again, thanks for joining us. Thanks for the questions. We'll see you next week. We will plan on it on December 23rd. That's a Monday. We'll see you next time. Until then, everybody have a great Tuesday and a great signing day. We may even try to get a podcast tomorrow with Corey. Corey, thanks for everything that you did answering these questions, keeping an eye on things. Appreciate you very much. And we'll talk to all you Spartan fans real soon. Thank you.